Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us today for episode 7 of Leading the Change, where Catherine and I monthly take up sustainability topics. And in today's episode, we will explore sustainability in the fashion industry. For those amongst you that are not so familiar with the fashion industry, I want to give you just a few facts. The production in the fashion industry nearly doubled from 2000 to 2015. Consumption is expected to increase by 63% between now and 2030, which means from 62 million tons to roughly 102 million tons. So the words overproduction, overconsumption are absolutely linked with the fashion industry, and they are fueled by fast fashion, or even now they are called ultra fast fashion players. The fashion industry has the fourth biggest impact on the environment and climate change, the third biggest impact on water and land use. Workers' rights, workers' health, workers' security, and workers' pay are questionable in this industry. And another fact, imagine nearly every second, so while I'm talking, every second a truck full of garments is either landfilled or burned somewhere on this globe. And I could go on now with some more facts, but I think I'll leave it with that. And the Global Fashion Agenda, which is a non-profit organization that fosters industry collaboration in sustainable fashion and to drive impact, they said fashion is about to change. Fashion has entered a new era. The majority of the fashion leaders, they recognize the importance of sustainability and they recognize the need to change. The industry is advancing towards sustainability, inclusiveness, and a more resilient future. However, current efforts that we see now are not sufficient enough to align with the target of the 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming and to meet the 17 United Nations SDGs goals. The good news is it's not too late yet, but we need decisive action and we need to have a rigorous follow through that is absolutely needed. And I'm so happy that we have today a guest with us who knows the ins and outs of the fashion industry. So welcome and thank you for joining us today, Lydia.
Hi.
Just a few words on Lydia. So Lydia is an international fashion buyer and she is a sustainable fashion advocate. Lydia she grew up in the UK, she lived in the UK, in Europe, in Asia, recently in China, and most recently Lydia founded Enkel and the Sustainable Fashion School. Lydia will for sure tell you more about that. Before we dive into the first question that we want to pose to Lydia, just a reminder, or for those that join us the first time, we pose some questions to Lydia. In the meantime, you can pose or formulate questions in the comments field. At the end, we will reserve approximately 10 minutes then we take up your questions and we will post them to Lydia. So hopefully, fire out. The first one, thank you for the intro. Yes, hi, welcome. But fire the questions and we will see. If we cannot get through all the questions, then we will answer them, of course, in the comments after. Okay, so Catherine, fire off the first question.
Okay, so I mean, I am fascinated, from an international fashion buyer to a sustainability advocate. Can you tell us more about your story and what made you become a sustainability advocate?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's really great to talk to you both today. But yeah, first of all, I just want to say that I absolutely love the fashion industry and I've had a really kind of wonderful career over the last 20 years. I've traveled the world on buying and sourcing trips and I've lived in the UK in Europe and Asia, and I'm now based in Sweden. And I'm really passionate about the industry. But in about 2015, 2016, something happened which really kind of opened my eyes and was kind of my pivotal moment, really. And I was living in Shanghai at the time, working for a UK brand. And at that point in time, the government in China were posing lots of restrictions on the factories that I was working with. And this was all about, reducing pollution and emissions in China. But what it meant for me in my job role was that orders were going late, factories were turning down orders, and prices were going up. And for me, that was obviously impacting my business, and meaning that, I couldn't deliver the demands and I couldn't get product delivered on time, etc., etc. But in conjunction to that, we actually had a app on our phone in China, which was like a weather app, but it was actually a pollution app. And one day I was in my apartment and this siren went off, and I'd never heard it before, didn't know what it meant, no one had told me. And so I rang my friend in a bit of a panic, in all honesty, to say, what does this mean? What do I do? And she said, oh yeah, it's the pollution app. It's the pollution siren. And it basically means pollution so high that you are warned not to go outside. And she was actually a teacher in a school in China working with young children. And she said, yeah, the children can't go outside and play. And it was that moment for me that I just suddenly, everything just kind of hit me. And I just realized that, all this time I was just so caught up in the industry, churning out products. And actually I was part of the problem. So that was my moment, really, that made me decide to choose to pivot my career. And I subsequently went and studied sustainable leadership on top of my day job. And gradually I started to carve out a new niche for myself in sustainability.
Great. So I think if I summarize as well, you said that once when we talked before, you realized that there was this tipping point for yourself where you said, I want to be part of the solution and not the problem or the pollution that you encountered at the time. So that's good.
Absolutely. And as I say, I love the industry, but it's, how to kind of use all that experience and knowledge and passion and energy, actually, because I got a lot of that, to do some good, and how to sort of really move things forward.
Yeah. So Lydia, you're a specialist, and you said you are now guiding brands on their journey towards becoming a more sustainable fashion player, towards circular economy. Can you share, and I'm pretty sure on this journey, it's like we all know it's a roller coaster, there are some frustrations, but there are also some highlights. So maybe you want to just share with us some of your highlights, some inspirations that you took up, and also what frustrates you, and then, okay, what are you planning to do to even drive more players joining the journey towards more sustainable fashion?
So I think, in terms of success stories and highlights, I think the whole industry, we're still, at very early stages in terms of the transition and the transformation that needs to happen. In terms of the work that I've been doing, it's really varied from working with suppliers and businesses to map out their materials and understand material impact, to understand how to reduce their impact and their emissions throughout their supply chain, to looking at resale platforms and how to work with businesses on products at the end of life. So I work on a whole host of different areas across the circular economy. But in terms of successes, what I'm really proud of actually is just starting a conversation. And, the amount of people that have come to me in the last year, 18 months, who I've worked with in industry over the years, who have come to me and said, you've really opened my eyes. You've really helped me to understand what the bigger picture is, what the bigger challenges are, but actually what a huge opportunity this is for the industry, and sort of almost sort of empowering them to take action and how they can be part of the change. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of, because typically this subject is seen as it's complex, it's challenging, it's quite overwhelming, and where do you even start? Where do you even begin to sort of tackle this problem? And I think by creating some of the material, the courses, the workshops, and the things that I've been doing, it's enabling people to really sort of take that learning on board and understand how they can make an impact, whatever role they are in the business, and whatever whatever role they have to play within their organisation and as an individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Starting the conversation is really critical, because this is where we can make sure that we align, or we start to speak the same language. So when because you were mentioning the circular economy, what are the critical steps the fashion industry needs to take to truly embrace circularity and sustainability?
So I think first and foremost, we need to really reduce our reliance on virgin materials. And people are quite shocked to realise that over 60% of global fibre production actually comes from synthetic materials. So, thinking about, polyester, which is the most commonly used fabric and fibre, acrylic, they're all derived from fossil fuels. And they're very much kind of contributing to the fast fashion and the ultra fast fashion that HP mentioned earlier. But they've been great historically because, they're durable, they're long-lasting, they're easy to wash, easy to care for, all those kind of things, and they're cheap. But, they're derived from fossil fuels and they sit around in landfill for hundreds and thousands of years. So, I think the biggest challenge at the moment in the industry is, what do we use as an alternative? And, there are alternatives out there, but they also have their challenges and their limitations. So, that is a really big challenge for the industry overall. But thinking about, products and design, over 80% of a product's environmental impact is determined at the design stage. So actually those decisions that you make when you're first designing and developing a product, and what that material is made from, what that material is used to make that product, is absolutely vital in terms of what happens to it at the end of life. So that's kind of my number one thing. Number two is about slowing down production. So in your last question, you said, what's one of your biggest frustrations? I didn't quite answer it there, but one of my frustrations at the moment is, we're seeing this whole plethora of resale platforms and collaborations with brands, which is wonderful, but it's just one part of this huge jigsaw puzzle. And I think, brands and businesses that are saying, we're sustainable because we've launched a resale platform is not strictly correct or true at all. It's just another avenue. The only way that we're going to really start to achieve a circular economy is we start to drive revenue through those resale models and resale platforms, which actually offsets brands from producing new products in the first place. So, this is another big challenge, because it's all about, degrowth, and how do we still grow as a business and thrive and survive in the long term without relying on the sale of new products? So that's, a really kind of interesting area. And then my third and final key point for this question is, in order to kind of achieve radical transformation, it's about being committed to change and daring to try and being bold in terms of making decisions. I don't think anyone has really got a true picture of the answers, but actually we've got some really good examples of what good could look like. And, we need to explore these ideas and models. We need to be willing to give it a go and see what works and see what resonates, and, to sort of course correct from there to move forward. But I think that taking that bold step is really, really critical for brands who want to ultimately really make an impact.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's absolutely right what you say. I've recently read something, and it said there, it's complex, but every journey starts with the first step. So you need to do the first step, and then one step after the other. So, and I think you said that before. So it's complex. People don't know where to start. So there's knowledge. So I think that was one of your reasons to found first you found, but then recently you founded the Sustainable Fashion School, and I think that was one of your responses to encounter the challenges that are there. Maybe people don't know what to do, where to start, and I think you rightly said 80% starts at the design. So what do you wanna? So what's your aim? What do you want to achieve with the Sustainable Fashion School? And if I would be interested. What do I get out if I make the Sustainable Fashion School course?
Okay, so the reason for starting the school was when I first started consulting on my own, and I was working with brands. I was working a lot with senior leadership, and I was, feeding in all this kind of really vital information, and I just couldn't help but feel this kind of overwhelming, compelling feeling of everybody needs to know this, wherever they are in the organization, whether they sit in kind of design and buying and product development, or whether they sit in HR or finance, because this is all shaping the future of how businesses operate. It's shaping the future of how teams are structured and where we need to have additional resources. The next generation that are coming through in terms of working for businesses, they want to work for purpose-driven brands. They want to know that the companies they work for are authentic and purpose-driven. So I was learning all this stuff, and I wanted to be able to kind of put that into material that people could access it, because the reality is, a lot of us that have been in the industry, and I'm sure you both appreciate this, is that, we almost need to unlearn a lot of what we've learned, because it's actually not fit for future anymore. So I wanted to create something that was, really digestible and accessible, and in a common language that we could all understand, because again, a lot of this stuff becomes quite heavy, and, if you don't understand it, it's harder to then think, well, what do I do to make a difference? Whereas if you understand it, then you can start to take action. So I've started to create a suite of courses, taking you through the circular economy. So starting off with fabrics and fibers, looking at circular design principles, looking at transparency in the supply chain, looking at policy and legislation which is coming through, looking at legislation and regulations, and also what happens to products and garments at the end of their life. And the vision is that I'll have the whole suite of courses that you can dip in and out of, to either learn yourself as an individual, or whether to actually train your teams within business, so that you've got a really empowered team of people who are really leading the change and driving the industry forward.
I think I love what you said, is because before you said 80% starts at the design of the product and the materials, and in a very few cases it is the top of the company that is keeping itself busy with the design of products and materials. So I think I really love that you say you start with them, but you realize very fast, and they realize that everyone needs to know, the designer, the buyer, or HR. So it really needs to be part of the DNA of these companies. And these people, once they know it, it's knowledge building, awareness building, and they are driving the change. So I think that's probably what you see as well. Huh?
And just to add, things are moving so fast in this space, and it is really hard to, keep on top of everything that's happening. And actually, by having that, trusted voice who's constantly kind of drip feeding that information and letting you know kind of what the latest is. And it's about giving people, the toolkit to be able to open up those challenging conversations, because this is moving really fast. But, if you've worked in the industry, you know that you start designing and developing products long in advance from when they actually hit the shop floor. And, we don't have that much time. So, we need people to start having those conversations now. It takes a long time to change your supply chain and to actually, implement change in supply chains. It's not something you can do quickly. So, by starting those conversations now and starting to kind of build that into your business models and starting to empower people with the tools and giving them, the confidence to be able to actually question things and say, well, should we still be doing that? Is that the right thing to do? And what about this? And, giving them examples of what looks like and sharing, ideas and inspiration from what else is going on in the industry globally, because, everybody is a part of this problem. It starts to kind of inspire others. And then by kind of gradually getting this information drip fed, I think suddenly, people start to go, right, okay, I get this, I understand it, and I know. what I need to do. And, you know, I had one student who was so compelled by what he learned. He actually chose to leave his job and go and study sustainability, because he was like, you know, I want to make sure that my career is purpose driven and that I'm doing something to drive some change. And, you know, that for me was just amazing to think that, you know, people can, you know, be so compelled by this subject that they can take that action.
I mean, first, it is beautiful that your student got really inspired and you were, I mean, able to open up his mind to other possibilities. That is, I think, absolutely important. So you mentioned before digital transformation and just now supply chain, that it needs time. Where do you see from the industry side, what type of digital transformation, what does it encompasses?
So, well, there's a lot around transparency in the supply chain, which is going to be really, really important, because in time there will be legislation and regulations, which will mean that, you know, businesses will have to actually demonstrate where their products and materials come from. You know, most businesses, they work with the manufacturer, but beyond that, they have no idea, you know, where the materials come from, where the fibers come from. A lot of things get outsourced through the supply chain. You know, the reality is a lot of people have absolutely no idea where materials come from and don't even question it when they buy something. But once you start to really actually understand, you know, well, what is this material made from and where does it come from and what is the impact of that? And actually educating people on, you know, looking at the care labels and really starting to kind of think twice. You know, that's really kind of powerful. But, you know, there's a lot in terms of digital transformation. There's a lot of technology which is going to enable businesses to really like literally kind of see the whole supply chain in terms of what comes from where, and some businesses will need to actually declare that and report that, but actually having that visibility through the supply chain is going to be really important. And AI, which is a whole other subject, but, you know, AI is coming through, which is going to enable a lot of transparency in the supply chain as well.
And what about the consumer side? Because, I mean, you know, we put a lot of burden to the to the producer, but we all, you said it or we said it, we are all part of the problem. And especially in fashion, and with the hyper fashion, the super fast fashion, how can we learn to slow down when we have so much convenience to buy online and, you know, to give it back and to, you know, to try to, what is your opinion and what would you advise consumers to do?
So I think the first thing that's really interesting is the growth in the resale market that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, resale is growing faster than any other sector of retail, and it's reported, I think, by ThreadUp that by 2027, 18% of our wardrobes will be secondhand. And, you know, the younger generation, they're really kind of into this. You know, they're shopping on Depop, and, you know, they're almost shopping secondhand as first choice. But for the older generation, you know, that's a real kind of shift in our consumer behaviour. But actually, we're really seeing people start to adopt this different approach and kind of understand that actually, you know, secondhand, it's great for the planet, it's great for your wallet, you know, and there's some fabulous things out there that are in wonderful condition that you can buy on the resale market. So, you know, I think there's this whole kind of shift in our relationship with clothing and with our wardrobes. You know, typically we've always kind of been wanting more, and this whole kind of social era of, you know, being photographed in different products and wanting something new. But actually now people are kind of recognizing the value in their own wardrobes and, you know, again, just sort of changing that relationship with clothing. So I think that's really interesting, and, you know, for customers to engage in that, but for brands to actually really build that into their business as part of a business model of the future, in terms of generating revenue. And then I think the other thing from customers is just really starting to kind of educate yourself on the industry and actually starting to really consider your purchases and really sort of understand the impact of that. and almost kind of trade up. So rather than buying maybe a cheaper item to kind of wear a few times, thinking about investing in pieces and building this kind of wardrobe of pieces that you really love and cherish that will be handed down. And if you decide you're bored of them, then actually put it on a Vinted or put it on eBay and actually embrace the resale market. And brands are starting to show on their basket now when you shop what the resale value is of that product. So again, it's this whole kind of shift in perception of, but if you buy something, you own it and you look after it. So it's kind of changing that shift when you purchase something, about thinking about the long-term value of that product.
Do you think that the TikTok, the Instagram influencers, selfie generation, that we can somehow also influence them, maybe not to dive into fast fashion because they want to have every day another outfit when they take a picture?
Absolutely. And there's actually something called the rise of the de-influencer now, which is we're starting to see on TikTok. But actually, if any of your listeners are interested, there's been a piece of work published in the last few weeks by the UN, and it's been written or co-written by a lady called Rachel Arthur. And I really recommend taking a look at that, because it's all about changing the narrative of sustainable fashion, and it's all about how we can really kind of use bloggers, TikTokers, this whole kind of era that we've got of online social media, how we can use that in a positive way to change the narrative of fast fashion to sort of slow fashion, and about really cherishing what we own, and how we can use those de-influencers to collaborate with brands to help them on their journey to understand and make a positive impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you said before, the generation set, so I think for them as well, they have so much influence from social media, etc. And they are, on the one hand side, they are the advocates, the drivers of secondhand. But on the other hand, they also shop on Shein and ultra fast fashion chains. So I think this balance between the two, I hope that this de-influencing really takes momentum and will be fast, because that's still, this contradiction is still out there with even this younger generation. But
yeah, Anna is asking a very good question, a question typically from a woman. So, Lydia, you are the right person. I've made a big shift toward the fashion resale market, and have a few favorite sites that I use. However, I only know how to use them to browse for interesting items. How do I search for a specific item? For example, a pink Gucci dress, or how can people, because I think that this is, Anna is asking or raising a very good question. How can we make sure that we can really that we can get a fit between the resale market and what people are really looking for? Do you have here some ideas that you could share?
So at the moment, I think it's quite interesting, because brands generally have got their kind of prime site, if you were shopping online, which is their full price and their main ranges, and then generally their resale platforms are powered with a different sort of search engine, and they're somewhere else, because there's always been this kind of nervousness in the industry that if you're promoting resale, then it's going to affect your sales of new product, which is where you're most likely driving your profitability. But what we're starting to see now is that, because it's such a growing area within the industry, businesses are sort of merging their shopping new with shopping pre-loved, because that's how customers are starting to shop now. They're buying some which is new and they're investing in it, and they're, I'm going to wear this for a long time and it's going to be a core part of my wardrobe. But actually, I'm also willing to buy that secondhand. And I didn't manage to buy that limited offer when it was when it was first launched and it sold out, but now I can get it. Amazing. and there's this whole kind of shift in how brands are sort of presenting their collections. We're not seeing so many brands do that, but I definitely think that's the future. But if you're looking for something specific and you want to shop pre-loved, shops like online platforms like Vestiaire, they specialize in kind of luxury fashion, and you can absolutely search and drill down to finite detail to find specifically what you're looking for. And there's other platforms like Vinted, which are also really easy to use, and again, makes the whole consumer shopping experience much easier, which is also a really important part of this.
Thank you.
And I think what you just said, Lydia, you see that the platforms also realize that usability, ease of use, search functions, so they more or less also improve on a daily basis, and I think a lot will happen. Let's take, having the time, and let's take the last question of Huang. Thank you so much for sharing insight. You mentioned first the needs of more supply chain transparency. Second, the crucial role of product design stage in its treatment at the end of life. From your experience working with brands producers, what were the key challenges to get everyone to volunteer the required information to enhance these transparency? Possible solutions. Thanks. So let's take that, and then I think we need to come to an end.
Sorry, so the question is about how to transparency in the supply chain. Can you just read that again?
Yes, from your experience working with brands and producers, what were the key challenges to get everyone to volunteer the required information to enhance transparency? Are there possible solutions?
Okay, right. So I think in terms of working with suppliers and mills and things, I think what's really important is actually collaboration and partnership. I think typically in a lot of the industry, especially in the kind of more kind of middle market, lower end sort of fashion, which we're talking about, it's really commonplace for brands to like move suppliers. It's like this trade-off constantly of, who can give me the best price, la la la. But actually, I think now it's a lot more about, these are our partners, we're working together. We've really got this shared vision in terms of, what we want to achieve, and it's about investment. And actually, it's going to require investment, and this is one of the big challenges that the industry is seeing, because I think, the goodwill is there, but actually it's going to require some real kind of commitment to invest in tools, in machinery, in technology, to actually really kind of embrace and transform supply chains. But I think it's about partnership is really important, and collaboration, and recognizing that, we need to work together to actually make it happen.
Before we end, we have a last question from Lara. What are your views on using dead stock?
Okay, what are my views on using dead stock? I think, again, this is quite interesting. I mean, we're seeing some really wonderful projects coming out in the industry about people using, dead stock material and upcycling, and some, really beautiful products that are almost kind of works of art. But the reality is we've got so much kind of dead stock material set out there. I think brands used to be quite kind of protective about dead stock and prints and patterns and kind of, obviously their brand protection. But now we're starting to see brands actually selling that, especially for things like students and startup businesses, and how they can actually use that. You also see in the industry, there's a lot around minimum orders. So, I'm sure I'm not the first buyer to put my hand up and say this, but I would buy more than I needed, because I would meet my minimum order quantity, I'd meet my meterage, and my mindset was I'll get a better price if I meet the MOQ, and then I'll sell that surplus product elsewhere. And to be honest, that was kind of someone else's problem at that point. And that's how the industry kind of operated. Whereas now it's about, buy what you need, and if you need to maybe pay a little bit extra to produce less, to reduce the waste, then that's something that we need to do.
Thank you.
Okay, Lydia, thank you very much. I think we are a few minutes over, but I think it was very interesting, very insightful. I hope the listeners and viewers also take something out of it. If you have questions afterwards, please put them into the comment fields. I think, Lydia, if you want, you can also put your links to your website and to the fashion school, or if there is any reselling platform that you would like to share, I think just feel free to put it in the comments.
Yeah,
and,
as well as the research you were mentioning earlier, which might be also very helpful.
Yeah, the UN playbook. Yeah, absolutely. I'll add that in.
Yeah,
that would be good. And as a preview, so we are back on the 22nd, I think Friday, 22nd of September. And then we have a new interesting guest, which we will announce soon, but I cannot really disclose that yet. But thank you very much for joining us today, and have a great rest of the day and a good weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.